Most people think belly fat is built in the gym and burned in the gym. That belief is comfortable, simple, and dangerously incomplete, because for a huge part of the day, your body is not making its biggest decisions under a barbell or on a treadmill. It is making them right after you eat, in those quiet minutes when blood sugar rises, insulin moves in, and your system decides whether this meal becomes fuel, fog, hunger, or storage. That soft weight around your middle is not just sitting there like a harmless cushion. It is listening to every post-meal signal you send. And here is the part almost nobody sees. A short walk after eating does not just burn a few extra calories and call it a day. It changes traffic inside the body. It changes where glucose goes, how hard insulin has to work, how violently energy swings, how digestion feels, how cravings build later, and how often your body gets pushed toward the same old storage pattern. What looks trivial from the outside can become a metabolic ambush or a rescue operation, depending on what you do next. By the end of this, you will understand why 20 minutes after every meal for 14 days can hit belly fat through a back door most people never even notice. The first surprise is this: belly fat is not only about overeating, it is about repeated chemistry. Especially the deep fat packed around your organs, the kind that behaves less like decoration and more like a moody factory. It releases signals, it reacts to stress, it thrives in a body that spends day after day getting flooded, spiking, crashing, and storing. That means the battle is not only about how much you eat, it's about what happens after you eat. And if you keep sitting still after every meal, you hand your body the same script again and again. Rise, store, slump, crave, repeat. Now picture the first day. You eat breakfast, sugar from the meal starts entering the bloodstream. Insulin steps in like a warehouse manager trying to move packages out of a crowded hallway. But when you stay seated, muscles remain relatively quiet. They aren't demanding much. They aren't opening the gates very wide, so the body has to lean harder on insulin to deal with the traffic jam. Then you stand up and walk. Not sprint, not suffer, just walk. And suddenly, your muscles start behaving like active tissue instead of parked furniture. Contracting muscle can pull glucose out of the blood more efficiently, which means less chaos and less panic in the system right when the meal is landing. That does not mean belly fat vanishes by dinner. This is where people either get discouraged or stupid. They expect one walk to flatten the stomach and reveal a new life by sunset. That is not how biology works. What changes fast is not the mirror first, it is the pressure. Lower glucose spikes can mean lower insulin demand after meals. Better blood flow can mean nutrients move more smoothly. A gentler rise and fall can mean your brain does not get thrown into that familiar energy dip that makes you want something sweet again 2 hours later. The body is not yet burning through layers of abdominal fat like a bonfire. It is changing the conditions that helped that fat settle there in the first place. By the second and third day, another shift begins. Your meals stop hitting like a wave and more like a tide. That matters more than it sounds. Big spikes often come with big drops, and big drops make ordinary afternoons feel weirdly heavy. You start thinking you need coffee, sugar, or a snack, when what you really need is a system that wasn't jerked around in the first place. A walk after meals can soften that roller coaster. You may notice fewer crashes, less bloating, less of that fixed, sleepy feeling after eating, and a slightly cleaner kind of energy. Nothing dramatic enough for a movie montage, but enough to notice that your body is less chaotic and less needy. And this is where the hidden connection to belly fat gets darker. When your blood sugar and insulin are constantly lurching around, appetite gets distorted. Hunger stops being a clean signal and starts acting like a manipulative little actor that deserves an award. You eat, then feel flat, then want more, then feel guilty, then sit longer, then store more. Walking after meals can interrupt that theater. It can help reduce the second hit, the random snack, the late-night raid, the strange feeling that your body is always negotiating for one more treat. Belly fat loves a body that keeps getting tricked into extra intake. It struggles more in a body that is stable enough to say no without feeling punished. Around day 4 to day 6, digestion often enters the story in a way people underestimate. Food does not just vanish into a magic tube, it has to move, churn, break down, and clear. A short walk after eating can help that process feel less sluggish. Many people notice less heaviness, less pressure, less gas, and less that brick in the stomach sensation. Why does that matter for belly fat if the walk itself is gentle and the calorie burn is modest? Because a body that digests more smoothly is often a body that feels less inflamed, less swollen, less desperate for relief, and less likely to confuse discomfort with hunger. Sometimes what people call fat in the mirror at the end of the day is a messy combination of stored energy, water, distension, and digestive traffic. Clean up the traffic, and the whole landscape begins to change. But here's the catch. The magic is not in walking once. The power is asking the body the same useful question over and over again. Are you going to sit there and store this, or are you going to help move it? Every meal becomes a fork in the road. Every walk becomes a vote. That's why 14 days matters. Not because it's a mystical number, because repetition teaches the body what to expect. The nervous system gets steadier, muscles get recruited more often, blood sugar management gets less clumsy, and your whole metabolism starts acting less like a city in panic and more like one with working traffic lights. Somewhere in the middle of that second week, the visual changes may start to whisper. Your stomach may feel less puffy, waistbands may sit a little differently, the lower belly may not look as swollen by evening, you may wake up less inflamed and less heavy. But this is where honesty matters. If you have significant belly fat, especially deeper visceral fat, 14 days won't turn you into a fitness commercial. It can do something more important. It can begin to reverse the daily environment that helped that fat stay comfortable in the first place. And that matters because visceral fat is not passive. It's linked to poorer metabolic health, more inflammation, and worse outcomes over time. You're not only chasing appearance, you're negotiating with risk. This is also when the brain finally stops being left out of the conversation. Post-meal walks can improve the way you feel mentally after eating. Less crashing can mean less irritability. More stable energy can mean less fog. A body that moves after meals often sends the brain a very different report than a body that slumps into a chair and waits for the chemical weather to turn ugly. You feel clearer, more capable, less dragged down by lunch like it was a personal attack. And that clarity matters because people usually don't lose control around food when they feel strong and stable. They lose it when they feel depleted, restless, or half asleep inside their own skin. Now, the bigger reveal. Belly fat is not only a food problem, it's a timing problem, a movement problem, and a signal problem. You can eat decent meals and still sabotage the post-meal window over and over. You can believe you're doing everything right because you went hard in the gym once a day, while the rest of your day quietly teaches your body to store more efficiently. That's the irony. Some people are fighting belly fat with heroic effort in 1 hour and feeding it with silence in the next 14. The post-meal WOD looks humble because it doesn't flatter the ego. It doesn't feel extreme. It doesn't look like punishment. But biology doesn't care what impresses you. Biology cares what repeats. And this is where everything changes. If you walk after every meal for 14 days, you're not just adding movement, you're inserting a metabolic correction exactly when the body is making one of its most important decisions. Right when glucose rises, right when insulin responds, right when blood flow can help, right when muscles can act like a sink for incoming fuel, right when a future crash can still be softened. It's not random movement, it's targeted timing. That's why it can outperform what looks more impressive on paper. A small tool used at the right moment can beat a bigger tool used at the wrong one. A wrench in the right bolt matters more than a sledgehammer swung for drama. There's another truth people don't love hearing. Sometimes belly fat shrinks not because one habit burns massive amounts directly, but because one habit stops the chain reaction that made everything worse. You walk after eating, blood sugar behaves better. You crash less, you snack less, you feel lighter. Digestion improves, energy steadies. Evening cravings lose some of their bite. You may even sleep better because the day was less chemically violent. Then the next morning you start from a better place instead of climbing out of a hole. That's how small habits become structural changes, not through magic, through momentum.
Of course, there are limits. If meals are enormous, highly processed, and relentless, walking won't erase all of that like some saintly little cleanup crew. If you barely sleep, live under constant stress, and move like a statue the rest of the day, the effect gets blunted. But that does not weaken the habit. It reveals its real role. It's one of the fastest, simplest ways to change the post-meal biology that feeds belly fat from the inside. Not glamorous, not trendy, not loud, just effective in a way that offends people who think only suffering counts. So what happens to your belly fat when you walk for 20 minutes after every meal for 14 days? First, the internal conditions begin to shift fast. Blood sugar spikes can soften. Insulin may not need to surge as aggressively. Digestion often feels smoother. Energy becomes more stable. Appetite becomes less manipulative. Bloating may ease.
Then, if you stay consistent, the environment that helps belly fat stay planted starts to weaken. The mirror may not scream the change yet, but the machinery underneath is already being rewired. And when the machinery changes, the body eventually has to follow. That is the real lesson. Belly fat does not only grow from indulgence, it grows from repetition, bad timing, and silent biological drift. And control does not always return through dramatic transformation. Sometimes it returns through a pair of shoes, a sidewalk, and a decision made right after the plate is empty. Not later, not tomorrow, not when motivation becomes cinematic. Right then, when your body is choosing what this meal will mean. If you want, test it honestly. 14 days, every meal, no negotiation, no heroic nonsense, no waiting for perfect conditions. Then come back and tell me what changed first. Your belly, your hunger, your energy, your crashes, your mind. And if this made you see your body differently, leave a comment and share what post-meal walking does to you. Because the small habits people ignore are often the ones that quietly decide the whole story.